All right, so it's new car day. You can see this thing in the background here. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but I'm pretty excited. Obviously, the Silvia is pretty cooked, and everyone does Silvias, so I kind of want to step outside that realm and try and put together what I think is the best Japanese 90s shell and chassis with the best Japanese 90s engine and try and build the ultimate drift car. So this is probably my pro car. We'll see how good it is, I guess. But anyway, come with me. We obviously have the iconic FD RX-7. If you follow me a little bit, you know I obviously have another one of these that has a 2J in there. I love the chassis. I think that car has so much potential and it means a fair bit to me too. So my dad actually used to race in Targa, Tasmania, do a lot of tarmac rallies in the FD RX-7. I used to circuit race one probably like 10 years ago, and I think the chassis is awesome and has heaps of potential. I think they're also really cool and probably the best looking car. But from a chassis and platform point of view, I think these things just absolutely dominate. And in standard form, there is like no other car from the 90s, from Japan, that will even go close down handling one of these things. So I have a real love-hate relationship with rotaries. But I love the noise, I love the power that they make. I've been bitten a lot by the rotary snake. We have blown so many 13Bs up. And for this build, honestly, we put heaps of thought in to a 4-rotor, maybe even a 5-rotor. Wasn't that sold on the 6-rotor, and obviously that quite a long engine as well. You can't really go past like a 20B turbo for power efficient. Obviously, there's so many billet plates coming out now, which just makes it so much easier. And I think this is honestly the ultimate rotary for the FD RX-7. And that's obviously by not having a rotary at all. It's the SR Plenty. This engine makes heaps of power, like over 1,000 horsepower, revs 9,500. It's light, it's compact, it's reliable. And I think this matched with the FD chassis will give us a really prudent, powerful chassis, but still keep that iconic Mazda chassis feel they're really known for. The engine's pretty much sitting back on the firewall, and I honestly think this will be probably lighter than a 13B, and we should be able to get this car to almost 1,000 horsepower and 1,000 kilos. So anyone who's not familiar, this is the billet SR20 package that we do here. So we run obviously the Bullet Engineering billet block, matched with the SR20 VE head. We know this package really well, and I've got this thing pretty sorted in my comp car. The last bottom end that we did was done 3 years at over 1,000 horsepower in a drift scenario. We stroke these things out to a 2.4 litre, and we rev them as far as 9,500. I would have loved to have done a rotary, but I just think it's just hard to justify. Like, first of all, they're really expensive, they're kind of long, they're kind of heavy. They sound really cool, but this also sounds really cool. And I actually think with the 4-cylinder pitch this engine makes and how grumpy this car is on idle, it'll probably sound a little bit like a rotary anyway, and probably be almost rotary enough that'll actually mess with our like rotary purists a little bit, which is kind of fun. So I picked this car up in Tasmania, and it's in pretty rough condition, but there isn't many RX-7 FD rolling shells in Tasmania, so you pretty much get what you're given to a point. We actually bought this car for spares, the other car, but I kind of like this idea, so it's just happening now. Someone's already stripped everything out of the interior. There's lots of parts missing. There's lots of door trims and all sorts of stuff that's going to be quite hard for one of these cars to get. But it's almost exactly where we want it. Like, we're going to bring this car all the way back to a bare chassis and prep this thing for a full FD spec roll cage. Also need to take the trans tunnel out. The engine's sitting pretty well, but if you have a look at the tunnel, it's actually really wide and then comes to narrow at the back. So with the Hollinger paired on here, like, it doesn't actually fit. So we'll have to cut all that out. The tunnel's actually really high. So rotaries have like quite a high center line. So the tunnel's high enough, we just need to kind of change the shape. That's cool too, these cars actually have a lot of reinforcement through here. Someone's already pulled all that out. If anyone's driven one of these cars that absolutely sucks, they've got a big reinforcement panel in here. When you run on the pedals, it's like completely in the way. So at least a little bit of the work's already done. I'm not sure what we're gonna do, but we will basically cut this car off at the back do a full fiberglass rear, potentially rear radiator. We'll see how we go. We'll cut it off at the front and we'll do a full chassis prep. But anyway, today's job is just like trying to fit this engine up and see how we go. So we'll get the engine sitting in nice and pretty and yeah, make up some mounts. So this is just our mock engine. It does fit pretty well. I've got it sitting back on the firewall. The balance looks really nice. Like cylinder 1 is actually behind the center line of the wheel, which is really cool. So I think this thing is probably going to keep still 50-50 weight balance, which is sort of what we're looking for. The engine is way too high though. It would be really easy just to nip the firewall out, but obviously we want to build this car to regulations. So really need to sculpt the front out of this sump and probably drop the rack a little bit and see if we can get it down. But currently the engine doesn't clear the bonnet. So obviously we're running a dry sump pan on this engine, and that gives us obviously a lot less height at the front of the motor over what you would typically have normally. We're still really tight just in this region here. But what is good news for us is obviously we're not using the oil pump, and the crank is obviously in between the caps here, so we don't have anything to worry about. Obviously it's going to be in here and spinning. So yeah, you don't want to make a mistake of cutting into this pan and then the engine doesn't turn. But if we're higher than these bolt holes here in this area, we should be able to trim pretty much the nose off. Also, being a dry sump pan, this is just one of my old shitty ones got lying around, just for mocking all this stuff up. Obviously the oil is designed to go to this side, so the engine's spinning this way, and ideally it shoots all the oil into here, and this will fill up, and you have 3 scavengers on the dry sump here sucking all the oil out. If obviously air is a lot thinner than oil, so they try and design these pans in a way that it gets solid oil flow, because otherwise it will just suck the air instead, because it will just take whatever the easiest path of resistance is. But the dry sump will take all of the frothy crap out too and send it back to the tank. Anyway, I don't think taking this corner out will affect anything. The only thing worth considering, I guess, is there's not that many drain backs in these engines, and they do return a lot of oil still down the timing cover, and that's also kind of equalizes pressure between the block and the head. So if we do cut this nose piece out, we probably will have to make sure that we still put like a nice radius in here so this can fall through. And this part here gets removed to the oil pump, so that won't be there anyway. But yeah, I think what we might do is we'll just mock the engine back up now, pull the pan off. Just think it's still gonna have to be this thick. We're gonna have to allow a little bit of clearance to the rack in case things flex anyway. So maybe just lay out like 15 mil worth of clearance. We'll just see how it fits up before we go cutting into something like this, and just see if we can get that engine like into the spot we want without ideally modifying the cross member. So we're just getting the engine on the correct angle. There's obviously a little bit of a punt in the wind still. There isn't anything that's like super accurate. We definitely got a lot more clearance without that pan on the front, but I'm still trying to simulate about 15 mil, 10 mil under the nose so it can fit like the actual flange and do it up. And normally it hasn't really bought us much more clearance. I was hoping that the engine might get down far enough that we'd actually clear this rack and be able to put the engine like under this lip, because there's like a big gap of almost 40 mil at the back of the engine there. Definitely not perfect. I think this is still going to hit the bonnet, so we still need to go down further. Our only real option from here is to move the rack, but I can't move the rack too far. So the Y-sub kit I run in the front of these cars, which would be the same as I use in the other RX-7, doesn't have a very big window for bump steer correction, so you can't move the rack too far. And with my other 2J car, that was actually a big handling problem we had initially when we were at Summer Bash. It had crazy towing on bump. So yeah, we're just trying to thread the needle here a little bit. This rack is just, this cross member is just a shitty old cross member that comes with the car. We have another good one over here. So we might just cut the nose off it and put it down, put the column back in the car, and just try and make sure everything's going to clear, put the power steering pump back on it, and just see if we can't finesse this to get it behind the lip. But we also have to be a little bit careful because we need the height, but we also need to be able to work on this thing too. So we have got it back in here again and a little bit more dressed up, and we have been able to make it fit while not moving the rack. So I really didn't want to move the rack. And in my other car as well, not only did the bump steer, we had like a lot of flex, and I had to weld a crazy amount of bars in because you pull a lot of strength out of these subframes when you cut the front off them. and there's no easy weld-in kit like there is obviously with the Silvia and stuff that we're like a bit more normal to. So I really didn't want to move it. Good news is we have made it fit, but it is like super tight and we are threading the needle. It is like hard up against the firewall. It is got good ground clearance in the back of the bell housing, and this thing's actually sitting in here pretty straight at the moment, and the bonnet just closes. Like the bonnet touches the top of the rock cover and touches the top of the turbocharger just slightly. We actually realized a lot of our issue was this back fitting and hitting that. That's kind of how we managed to sneak ourselves like a little bit of room. Not sure what we'll do about that back bit. We'll probably have to cut the bonnet out. We aren't using this bonnet, so we're also hoping the bonnet that we've got coming has a bit more of a ridge in it, which it looks like it does online, but like who actually knows, and does have a little more clearance. But the bonnet does shut. It shuts relatively decent, so that's a win. Now with the engine essentially in the place it's going to live, we can mock up everything else and see what else is and isn't going to fit. Obviously all this stuff's just straight off my Silvia, so like heaps of stuff isn't going to fit. We have worked out the alternator will be sitting basically on top of the rack, and same with the dry sump pump. Only good news about this is I've made these brackets for this engine anyway, so it probably isn't the end of the world to make brackets to suit. I think the engine looks really cool in there and almost like it's made for it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me feeling good about this project. But this was a little bit of a proof of concept, and I think on paper this makes heaps of sense with this engine choice and this chassis. Obviously no one really does this for drifting, and this is more of like a circuit style build rather than like the normal 2J S15 drift build everyone does. We're trying to do something that's pretty exciting, something that's pretty different. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this content.